In a world that feared her, she dared to hope for a connection. But on Christmas Eve, that hope was shattered. Tessara Windhollow, a Draith woman from the ancient Cinderist clutch, sat all alone at a small table in the bustling Stellar CAF. The chair across from her was painfully empty, a reminder of the man who'd sat there just 17 minutes ago. His name was Vardok, another Draith, and his exit had been as quick as it was crawl. He had looked at her, his eyes as cold as cooling magma, and said words that still hung in the festive air. I only agreed to this because my business partner said it would be good for interspecies relations. Frankly, I prefer my own kind to be pure, and with that, he stood up, walked out without paying, and left her in a silence that was louder than any roar, a cold void right in the heart of the city's cheer. The night had started with so much fragile hope. Tessara had spent most of the afternoon getting ready, an act that was less about vanity and more about quiet defiance. In a city dominated by humans, just presenting her Draith heritage with pride was a daily battle. She'd polished every one of her golden scales until they shone like 1,000 tiny suns, a warm, living gold that marked her mixed bloodline, a feature the Draith purists like Vardok hated. Calling it a sign of being a warm scale, she carefully put on her grandmother's earcuffs, intricate pieces of obsidian and silver that whispered stories of a lost world, a world swallowed by a dying star. Her thermal weave jacket, a practical choice for the planet's winter, was draped over her chair, her leathery wings a mark of her power tucked neatly and respectfully against her back. The Stellar CAF in the Midwick district was a popular spot, famous for its mix of cultures. Holographic snowflakes drifted through the air, melting just inches from the ceiling, while the smell of human coffee mixed with the spicy aroma of alien teas. When Vardok arrived, Tessara's heart had actually flooded with hope. He was handsome, well-dressed, and carried himself with the confidence of the Cinderist clutch. His scales were the color of cooling magma, a deep, metallic gray that was considered very desirable. For just a moment, she let herself believe her clutch sister had been right. This could be the one, Tess, she'd insisted. He specifically asked for someone outside the usual breeding pool. The conversation, though, went downhill fast. He talked about his business, about politics, about how important it was to maintain Draith purity, even while living among humans. He waved off her passion with a flick of his hand. She was a xenobotanist specializing in growing resilient plants from dead worlds, a field she found incredibly meaningful. To Vardok, it was just a quaint little hobby. Focusing on the dead, he'd scoffed, when you should be focused on the future of our bloodline. He asked where she lived. When she said the Midwick district, a notoriously mixed neighborhood, his lip curled. Surrounded by humans, he muttered, as if it were a disease. The final blow came when he looked at her horns, which curved in gentle spirals instead of the aggressive, backward sweep of his own. Too humanized, he declared, the words landing like stones. You carry yourself like one of them. Your clutch has intermarried too freely. It's made you soft. Then he stood up, the very picture of casual cruelty. He didn't make a scene. He simply decided he was done. He glanced at her synth coffee, then at his own untouched drink. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving her with the bill, the stares from the other tables, and the crushing weight of his judgment. It wasn't just a rejection from a date. It was a rejection from her own kind, for not being Draith enough. What came next was a silent, suffocating storm of humiliation. The low chatter of the CAF seemed to fade into a dull roar in her ears. She could feel the eyes on her, some curious, some pitying, a few with that familiar flicker of fear. A young human waitress shot her a sympathetic look that somehow made it all worse. Tessara felt a hot, familiar shame rise in her throat. This wasn't new. She'd faced prejudice from humans who saw a monster from their myths, but this cut so much deeper. This was one of her own people confirming her biggest fear, that she didn't belong anywhere. Her body, betraying her, reacted. A protective nictitating membrane, a feature humans often found unsettling, slid over her eyes, clouding her vision. It was an involuntary Draith response to extreme emotional distress. She fought it, forcing the translucent lids to pull back. She would not cry, not here, not in front of them. Still, a single tear escaped, rolling down her cheek. When it hit the warm, golden scale just below her eye, it sizzled, evaporating in a tiny, insignificant hiss of steam. She had to get out of there. The plan was simple: pay the bill, slip out, take the rail tram back to her small, lonely apartment, and open a bottle of hunted fire wine. She'd spent Christmas Eve the way she spent so many other nights, nursing the certainty that she was destined to be alone forever. Through the frosted window, she saw a human family walk by, the parents holding their children's hands, their faces glowing with a simple joy that felt a universe away. Laughter echoed from a nearby table where friends were exchanging gifts. The whole world was a kaleidoscope of warmth and connection, and she was on the outside, looking in through a pane of cold glass dot. In a small act of defiance against the despair, she decided not to run. She would not be chased out. With a composure she didn't feel, she signaled the waitress. "I'll be keeping the table," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "And I'd like to order a glass of spiced fire cider." It was a traditional Draith holiday drink, warm and strong. It was a taste of a home that didn't fully claim her, but tonight she would claim it for herself. As the waitress nodded and left, Tessara wrapped her clawed fingers around her cooling mug of synth coffee, her knuckles white. She would finish her drink. She would have her cider. She would sit right here in her beautiful clothes and her gleaming scales, and she would endure. Time stretched on, thick and slow. Tessara was lost in thought, just staring into the swirling patterns of her cider, when a small, hesitant voice cut through her misery. "Excuse me? Your scales are really pretty." Tessara looked down. Standing right beside her table was a little human girl, no older than 6. She was bundled in a bright red winter coat, a dusting of melted snowflakes glistening in her dark hair. Her eyes, wide and blue as a summer sky, held nothing but pure curiosity and awe. In one small, mittened hand, she clutched a shiny red Christmas ornament like it was the most precious thing in the world. Tessara was so surprised she couldn't speak. Children usually stared, sure, but almost always from behind a parent's legs. Their curiosity was usually tinged with fear, a learned response to her sharp claws, her horns, her sheer otherness. But this child, she was different. "They look like gold coins," the little girl added, taking a half step closer. She pointed the ornament at the empty chair across from Tessara. "Are you waiting for someone?" Tessara found her voice, a low, smoky whisper. "No, sweet one, I'm not." The little girl, whose name was Lily, seemed to process this with a solemn nod. Her gaze went from the empty chair to Tessara's sad eyes. Then, with the perfect logic that only the very young have, she asked the question that would change everything. "My daddy says it's not nice to be alone on Christmas. Can we join you?" The words hit her, but not with rejection. It was a sudden, shocking impact of pure, unfiltered kindness, a lifeline thrown into the deep, cold ocean of her loneliness. For a moment, all Tessara could do was stare at this tiny human who, with one simple question, had offered her more acceptance than she'd felt all night, maybe all year. Just then, a man hurried over, his face a mask of embarrassment. "Lily, I am so sorry," he said, his voice a rushed whisper as he put a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We talked about this. You can't just bother people." He had kind eyes, weary from what looked like the challenges of being a single parent, and an apologetic smile. He started to steer his daughter away, but Tessara found her strength. She cleared her throat, and the sound was stronger now. "It's all right," she said, and for the first time all night, a real, small smile touched her lips, revealing the points of her teeth. It wasn't a smile of politeness or defiance, but one of genuine, fragile hope. She looked at the man, then at the little girl, watching her with hopeful eyes. "Actually," Tessara said, gesturing to the empty seats, "I could use the company. Please join me." Lily's face lit up like the star on the CAF's Christmas tree. "Really? Can we, Dad? Please?" The man, who introduced himself as Alex, hesitated for only a second, reading the deep loneliness in Tessara's expression. He nodded slowly, his own smile becoming a little less tired. "If you're sure we wouldn't be intruding, I'd be grateful for the company," Tessara said, and she meant it more than she had ever meant anything in her life.
The first few moments were a delicate dance of awkwardness. Alex and Lily settled into the booth, a stark contrast to the imposing figure of Vardok. Alex ordered a coffee for himself and a hot chocolate for Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement. But the tension didn't last long, thawed by a child's endless curiosity. "Are you a real dragon?" Lily asked, her chin barely clearing the tabletop. Tessara, who had braced herself for a lifetime of being seen as a monster, found the question freeing. "I am a Draith," she explained gently. My ancestors are where your planet's stories of dragons come from, I think. Wow, Lily breathed. Can you breathe fire? Tassara chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. A tiny wisp of happy smoke escaped her nostrils with the laugh. Only when I get very, very angry, or when I eat something extremely spicy. Lily giggled, a sound like tiny bells. The conversation just flowed from there, easy and natural. They didn't talk about interspecies politics or bloodline purity. Lily showed Tassara her red ornament, explaining it was for her mom, who was in the stars. Alex's face flickered with a quiet pain at that, a pain Tassara recognized instantly. In that shared moment of understanding loss, another invisible wall crumbled between them. Tassara, in turn, told Lily about the Draith Festival of Lights, a celebration of their home star held in the deep of winter. She spoke of clutch families and hatching days, and how young Draith learned to catch the thermal winds between city spires. She painted her world not as something alien and threatening, but as a place of wonder, a place a little girl could understand. Alex mostly just listened, watching the incredible scene unfold. He saw his daughter, who was often shy, completely captivated. And he saw Tassara, not as some intimidating alien, but as a woman with a gentle voice and sad eyes, who was endlessly patient and kind with his child. He saw her tracing patterns on the table with a clawed finger, her golden scales shimmering under the cafe lights. He saw the woman Vardock had been completely blind to. Rough night? Alex asked quietly, while Lily was busy building a castle out of sugar packets. Tassara's smile was a little wry. Is it that obvious? I know that look, he said softly. The one that says you were expecting company that didn't just show up, but unshowed. She let out a short, bitter laugh. My blind date, he decided I wasn't Draith enough for him. Alex just shook his head. His loss. Completely. They shared a plate of Christmas cookies, and the picture they made was beautifully, strangely perfect. A Draith woman with golden scales, a weary human father, and a little girl with a crooked bow in her hair, all sharing a table on Christmas Eve. The other patrons were still watching, but now they were smiling. They weren't looking at a monster and two potential victims. They were looking at a family, however temporary, however strange. They were looking at the spirit of Christmas, unfolding in the most unexpected way. When the cafe finally announced it was closing, Lily groaned. But we just got here. We've been here for 3 hours. Sweetheart, Alex laughed. As they bundled up to leave, he turned to Tassara. Let us walk you home. It's late, and the city can be. I would like that very much, Tassara said, her heart feeling fuller than it had in years. As they stepped out of the warm cafe into the cold night, the holographic snowflakes swirled around them, catching in Tassara's hair and on Alex's coat. Lily, refusing to let the magic end, insisted on holding both their hands. She swung between them, a small, happy pendulum connecting two lonely worlds. The night that had begun with the cruel sting of rejection had ended with the unexpected, incredible gift of connection. It was a bond forged not from convenience, but from the brave, pure heart of a child who saw someone sad and refused to let them be alone. For Tassara Windhollow, this was no longer a miserable Christmas Eve. It was the first quiet moment of a future she had never, ever dared to imagine. But the world that had cast her out wasn't going to change overnight, and building a new life with a human and his daughter would bring challenges she couldn't yet foresee, testing her in ways she never expected. And that's where we have to leave Tassara's story for now. To find out what happens next to this unlikely trio, and how they navigate a world of prejudice and hope, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss part 2.